Hello, and welcome back. So, we will continue our conference. Hopefully, other of our colleagues will return soon. We will start with Mr. Arndt GOSSMANN, Chief Executive Officer for DGTAL. And you have a very difficult task because you have to help us encourage our guests to cease their siesta after the lunch. But I'm sure that what you have to say is interesting enough to do it. So, if we heard earlier from Matteo about insurers becoming all telematics, now it seems that they have also another perspective to consider of becoming artificial intelligence first. So it is not for me to choose who to sustain in this battle, let's say it like that, but they will convince you by what they are presenting.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I hope everybody can understand me. As you rightly pointed out, it's a tough slot, both for me and probably more for you, to sustain the next 30 minutes with me after the lunch. I can tell you that I had tougher tasks, and I remember a conference where I had to give a keynote on day 3 of a conference at 7:30 in the morning, and half of the people were Brits. I can tell you, they all came, but the physical condition of my audience was disastrous. So you look much better, to be very open. I'm CEO of Digital. My background, however, I don't give you my CV right now, but my background is insurance. If I say we, our industry, I don't mean tech, I mean insurance. I just have made mentally the transition, becoming a tech guy from insurance. I apologize in advance. Where do I have the buttons here? I changed a little bit and I hope this is working here so that I can work a little bit around. 1, 2, yes. Look, before I tell you a little bit what we are doing in AI and what you can do with AI, I want to reflect a little bit on the currently public discussion, which is ongoing, and I would like to touch the phase what AI cannot. And the background is here more about not what it cannot and whatever it can't and can't do, but some of you might have heard who follow that there's this nice thing called ChatGPT. Presumably we all have had our little games with it. Those of you who are Italian, like Matteo already, he just told me that he bought a new SIM card from another country so that he can go into ChatGPT still. Yeah, there's a vague, broad discussion. Germany, where I come from, there's the similar level of discussion. The Data Protection Authority considers as well to block ChatGPT. Well, I took the pleasure to look into the Italian justification of it. As we work for, meanwhile, 2.5 years with GPT, we're a professional partner of OpenAI. And we're also working with all the other models. There are quite a few of them out there. There's a French one called Bloom. There's Lambda. Yesterday, Bloomberg announced the launch of their financial services large language model. There are a couple of these things which are happening right now. We've seen most of them. With some of them we work intensely. The justifications of at least the Italian regulator to forbid it, I would have a couple of ideas why I would be careful with it. All arguments that I've seen so far doesn't really make sense. So it makes sense to take it from the ground. What does it mean? What is AI doing and what is AI not doing? AI and the specific things we look here on right now, so large language models, are generic models that bridge language into mathematical equations. Actually, for me it was 40 years back. It's called vectors. These things that are, if they are three-dimensional, like arrows in the air. Language vectors have between 2,500 and 8,000 dimensions, but apart from that, they work exactly the same. So what these models do is they translate words, terms, or entire paragraphs into a mathematical vector. And this means this mathematical vector is recognizable. You can look after that. If you have a similar way, a similar paragraph, even if you use other words, both vectors will be close to each other. That is how this thing works. ChatGPT is doing nothing else but combining vectors and put them in relation to the vector that tells him, please write a text about whatever motor insurance. Nothing more. Nobody thinks into this. It is the technicality behind it in order to get this running is artificial intelligence. But it is not artificial intelligence that is thinking. This might come out of this over time into the future, but we are very far behind this moment, and that's very important to understand. I give you an example. If you have two statements, and put it on GPT, put it on Bloom, it works perfectly as well, and you say, King Charles is coming to Vienna next month. And if you have a further statement which says, Charles is going to King Curry in Vienna next month, the two vectors will be far away from each other. Also, the single vector for the term king will be different, just by the context of it. So, where we would say, okay, king, same word, should be actually the same. So, this is a level that such models are able to do, which is great news because you can do a lot with that already. If we have in another example, and we say that we simply describe who's sitting here. And we write a text and we say, Alin is sitting next to Luka, is sitting next to Maria. And in the row behind, Denisa is sitting left of Orsolia. I hope I pronounced that right, who's sitting next to Matteo. Then you can ask models like GPT, who is sitting left of Ursula, and you will get the right answer. It's going to be Matteo and it's going to be Denisa. If you ask, after describing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if you then ask who's sitting behind Luka, the system will give you either bullshit or say, sorry, I can't. So what's missing is the understanding of it, the transfer. Large language models are very good in reproducing text, in cutting through text, in categorizing data, unstructured data into structured data. But there are far and dimensions from it, and we don't even need a break of 6 months. In 6 months, they won't reach the fact that they then understand, okay, who's sitting behind, so any kind of setup things, any transfer is not working. So, having said that, I give you a little bit an insight, and to make it relevant as well for insurance and for motor insurance, I give you some examples. So, what we are doing is actually we translate, and we developed a software, and to be honest, this happens more or less out of accident. We developed a software that is translating unstructured documents, unstructured insurance documents, into a structured format so that they then can be analyzed. Why is that, first of all, how is that doing? So we as I said, we work with OpenAI for 2.5 years right now, also it happened by accident because my former activities went, well, slowed down during the COVID thing, and so the project of an AI firm in Switzerland, and the result of the boredom is actually the software that I'm going to show you right now. So what we did is we trained GPT. So we started with GPT-3. So you know, at the moment we are at GPT-4. We started with GPT-3 to train the language model on insurance. Language models are very generic. They're not made for a specific industry. But for example, a counterparty has of course a different meaning when it's about an insurance litigation and when it's about whatever, an article about sports, for example. So these models need to be trained. Otherwise, they give you roughly a good idea, but it's a little bit a random exercise that sometimes you get a great summary and sometimes you get complete bullshit. And that doesn't really help. So in order to make these language models stable, in order to bring it into workflows, and in order to really have efficiency gains with it, you need to make them better. AI is like a little child. You have to learn it. So what we have AI today is a little child that has just learned language, but not the context yet. And that's actually what's to be done. This is not only for insurance, this is actually throughout all the industries. The first more specific model that is open source is the one of Bloomberg. They're very much going, they launched yesterday, and they're very much going on financial services in general, but it's more like whatever bond documents and these kind of things. So, what's key? I shouldn't forget here, talking to. So, we built a platform, we trained a language model, and we built a software as a service platform that's exactly doing that, actually taking claims documents, that's where we focus on, both health and motor, into a structured format. How does it happen? I will show you a little bit later. The level we reach is we make it first machine readable. Then we have a contextual pre-analysis about it. So what is the text roughly about? What are the key topics and how relevant they are? You actually measure a certain density of topics. And the third is then really getting also a grip on the content. So what's the key content of it? So once you have structured data, then you can better analyze it. Actually, it facilitates that you can analyze all content of information, and you can do that not as good as a human, but close to good as a human as when it comes to the assessment. And that, of course, gives additional insights then on further analysis or even when you work around that. It all starts with the document itself. So I have here an example letter. So this is a letter, this is a legal letter. No, you cannot really read it. It was useless to produce something which is data protection clean because you wouldn't have seen it anyway. Anyway, good. So this is a letter like you would always see it. It's about an accident that has happened. A child was injured. So presumably you have this available and as a PDF in some kind of electronic format. Then what's happening? This is uploaded. What is uploaded, and then it's translated actually into machine readable and pre-analyzed. And then the next thing that you see is here that the letter, you still see the original letter on the one side, and then you see here topics. So this is what the AI is actually doing in the first place. It finds out what are relevant topics. In this case, we display anything which is around 1 and plus, so that's relevant. It's a legal document with a high probability. It's about a child. It's about hospitalization, and it's about a disability, I think. So these are the relevant topics. Nothing that you or people in your departments, in your companies could do as well. Probably less fast, right? Because this is something that you can do practically in real time, because the machine does it in real time. So you can sort it out. Then You have the transcript, that's something that happens in the background. So the same text. The critical thing here is the devil is a little bit in the detail, because you of course don't get only complete texts, which is then analyzed like you use it when you play with ChatGPT around. But what you get is a letter, and we've seen it. It has a letterhead. Sometimes the legal stuff, they have the letterhead right. Sometimes they have it below. The invoices, sometimes it's a table, sometimes it's free text. So you have all kinds of different formats. And the machine, before you even convert the text into an AI understandable format, before you do that, what you need to do is actually, the machine needs to understand, it's called parsing, needs to understand what are the relevant areas. For the counterparty recognition, because that's also something, but the technology does pretty easily. Therefore, it's relevant. Usually claims IDs you have on the top of things. So actually, you need to the software needs to pre-understand, and again, there you need the AI. You need to pre-understand what type of document is it, how is it structured, and which structures, which parts are relevant for what? For the counterparties, for the text, for the understanding in itself. So that's an example then here how the entity recognition is. This is something that you normally would have to do manually, that the machine does into it. I think that the guys who did this slide have had a look on the participants here, because I see that Hellas Direct is present here. So Hellenic Insurance is the company that they put into this example. And then what you have as well is a severity prediction. Again, a bit step further. So based upon the topics which are analyzed, you remember, like child, disability, legal, etc. Each document gets, and you can adjust that portfolio by company, gets already a severity score. How relevant is it? Then you compare the same thing, because whether you translate a new document into machine readable format, or whether you have already the entire claims file on this level, and then it compares what happens to the severity score of the entire file by this document. And then you can create alerts, whatever, or you make a triage. So if there's coming a 46 pages court decision, it doesn't make sense anymore that three claims officers are looking at it, and at the end it anyhow ends up in the legal department, where it could have gone directly. But first they look into it and so on. So you could do these kind of things automatically. So here it gets a bit more interesting than because with the technology that we have today, and as I said, a little bit trained, it's also possible to summarize documents, however long they are. So what you see here, as this letter is from, and so on and so forth, you can even adjust it. This thing speaks 70 languages. Bloom speaks 30 languages. So depending on what model, if you combine 2-3 models, you can get this pretty easily on such a thing. So by the time that the first human expert looks on a new document, he will get it with a summary, with the relevant entities, and with a pre-warning whether this is really a relevant document or not, because something happens on the severity side. And then you can ask questions. Well, for a one-pager you won't, probably. If you have 46 pages and a court decision, you might ask questions. Or, because you're all smart people and the questions that your people have when they get a court decision on a motor accident are predominantly not exactly the same, but they follow more or less the same pattern. Then you put the pattern behind and the machine asks these questions before you even see the document, and you already have your key things done. Is there a notice period? Can we go for appeal? Until when? Whatever, these kind of things. And then you get them here, or you ask freely into such a document. So, having said that, that's a little bit, and I think you get a little bit of glimpse and a couple of ideas what you can do in workflows using this type of technology into making simply the things and the work easier, more specific, more to the point, and from that perspective also gaining the possibility of becoming better. And what we see here is actually, it's not only for the sake of, well, saving some admin costs probably because you have a couple of people less, but it's also about becoming better in the assessment of such claims, simply by having more time. One of our clients, the CEO, told me last week, he said, because I said, look, do you expect any redundancies? He said, no. Because he said we will focus then on them giving more time, the experts giving more time to look on the critical places, because currently we're really sailing hard at the wind with the capacities and people are not looking into it. He presumes that he's losing money. And I think we're all right in that, into this. We all have to cut corners into that aspect, and if that's not necessary, because the standard stuff is running much faster through that, and even the complex. This is interesting. AI is interesting also for the complex stuff. It's not only the black box for the car window damaging type of thing, which can be mostly automatized anyway. If you have now, imagine, you have a claims file. All claims files are fully digitized, so not only PDF, but are in this format, are in the machine, read out by the machine. Then you can look, you can analyze every piece of information that is in all these claims files, an entire portfolio. You can look for all claims files which involve a red car, and whatever other idea you have, and cross-referencing into that. That makes it interesting because that gives things like here, and we don't see it here clearly. I mean, this is just an example of one portfolio. So what you see here is actually, this is a portfolio, roughly 140,000 claims. In this case, in this example, most of them are closed. And you see the payments, the reserves, and so on. This comes by combining, which is very easy. You combine the full data set of the content of the claims files with the structured data that you have anyway. So just the reservation. Those data that your actuaries get, plus actually the digitized claims files, give you that. And then you can say, you can look through it like with Google, so in the free text source, or you have a structured thing. And you say, you've got labels here, don't know whether you see them. You can say, I want to know all the cases which are below 10,000 reservation, but have indications for disability or any kind of other indications that this might be a large claim or might become one. Where did I left the little button thing? Yeah, there, thank you. I need AI to get this stuff here. Done. So like here, so you can find out specific cases that you then use either to go deeper because you want to understand it, or that you can use actually to say, okay, I just want to understand the tectonics of it. You all know the little discussion that we have by the end of the year when it's about IBNRs type of thing. This is why actuaries love that stuff, because they said for the first time, we really can test our assumptions that we have, or even we can derive assumptions of that. You even can go, remember the little thing about the vectors. We had a pilot a year ago where the insurance company came to us and said, yeah, well, look, we want to try this out, right? We want to see that it's really working. And, but not the normal stuff, because there had been a West German insurance company which had been involved by the floods. You might have heard that there had been a couple of floods there, and so they wanted to have a better understanding of the cases that they have there. And actually, so we just took in those cases where they had the suspicion, because actually the only way that this insurance company was able to make the first test was to check postal code and date of the event. But of course, they had a couple of rental car fleets in that. Of course, not all rental car fleets had been coincidentally on the same place. So actually, most of them were not affected by that. They had claims, they had accidents on that respective day, but not a full damage due to a flood. So in order to figure out these things, you just can go then either you use for specific terms or even for specific parts. A reinsurer used that actually on the same thing, used that afterwards on the basis to find out to what the exposure by looking for certain paragraphs into these. My little wake-up thing here is. This was for you in case you would have fallen asleep. Thank you for not. To find out whether there are certain paragraphs in the reinsurance contracts which would affect, so whether they're exposed or not. As each underwriter changes them always a little bit, kind of things. Actually, it's no problem when you use AI. You have a vector that recognizes similar. They don't have to be the same, but that recognizes similar types of paragraphs. So, claims filtering, I'll leave you out of that. I think you get. So this is then actually a view on one specific claim. Nobody has to do this, right? You just give the grid. The power of AI is around the fact that we don't have to preset which piece of information will end up in which part of the box in the table. The machines are able to do that on their own. And this is also the reason why is AI coming now and not 5 years ago. Why? I mean, I sometimes hear that insurance is a bit back in the technology of that. The load of information that insurers have, which is a treasure if you use it, but the load of information that they have. So a large global insurance company has about the same amount of data than a global data player like Facebook, or Google. Google has more, but Facebook, but definitely, for example, Amazon. But the difference is that Amazon has everything already digitized, and they use everything. And that's also the opportunity with which I'd like to close. So if you do the fun, and if you know that the amount of information is about the same. So insurance companies, at least when it comes to claims, according to, I think it was McKinsey, they looked into that as well, and they found out insurance companies, so we're using 2% of the information that we have in order to make our job better, because we couldn't so far. So there's 98% into it. Remember, Amazon has about the same amount of information that the large global insurance company. Amazon has also comparable level of revenues than the large insurance companies. The stock market price of a large insurance company, if it's listed, is about 50% of its revenues. Amazon, it's ×4. So for all those who will take soon the role of a CEO somewhere, you have a great opportunity if you use a little bit more AI, and if you transform your company into that. Well, you can boost the share price by 8 times, and I think even if you do it twice or 3 times, you're going to have a great time. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Arndt. First, any questions? Yes, please.
Sandra.
Liability for AI. I mean, you know, when today I have...
I'm running around, 1 second.
And if one of my staff members, and it's human intelligence or unintelligence, makes a mistake, I know what I have to do. So either we have to discuss, or at a certain moment I have to announce it to my liability insurer, and then it's covered. What is about AI? It's just, you know, perhaps you can't even answer it, but who is you can, perfect. So who is responsible, and how can I be sure that I have the same level of protection?
Well, you could always sue us, but I'm not going to suggest that. Look, first of all, what we have to see is These are systems, I mean, I can imagine that we will partly enter into some level of automation over the couple of years. At the moment, these are support systems. It's like an MRT that you can use. The decisions have to be taken by humans. It just we can be more to the point and make it to the right person and faster and probably settle faster, which makes our clients more happy into this. But it's not about taking the decision yet. It would be too premature. As I said in the beginning, it's not a thinking brain. It's just a helpful child that makes the life of your people. So unfortunately, you still have to go back to the people. As another, however, perspective on general on the AI stuff is, and this is a little bit the situation like the Brits in World War II started at some point of time to use a radar system that didn't exist before. So all of a sudden, the ships of the British Navy were able to see, even in fog and bad weather, if there's another ship. I can tell you, if you look on a radar system today, you can see if a little metal duck is somewhere on the ocean, and you can find this. At the time, you could see big ships as one dot. So still, they didn't have the security for that, but they saw much more than compared to before. Last remark to that, how valid is this stuff? So how many things you get where you don't see or where the machine doesn't see it? The good thing about it is it's a machine. It finds it out themselves. So what you see if things are not readable or the machine doesn't get it for whatever reason, it's flagged. It's just flagged and you measure it. So we actually, the last, to reach 92% of text of recognition, full content recognition, is quite reasonable. The last mile towards the 90, towards from 92 to 99, that's the difficult part of it. But it's not then that entire portfolio is not readable, but it's one document in one file, and another document in another file. And if you make a deep dive, it blinks you. It said, unreadable stuff. Then the human has to look at it. But you don't have to look at it. This we made a little on the example that you saw. Because we involved claims people into that. The software, by the way, has been developed not only by some tech guys, so these freaky people with long beards and so on, we definitely have a few of them, but also some, half of the team is claims people. So it has been claims people beside with developers. It had been a cultural shock, I can tell you, in the very beginning, but meanwhile they really get along well. So it's about really getting the routine into this stuff. Legally,
they are smart enough, the consultants, to make it a Dienstleistung. I don't know.
No, we're not consultants. We're software as a service.
Software
and yes, we have a liability.
But not a werk. Not a werk. So you don't promise the success.
Everybody, even in the things, it's not. We don't.
Otherwise, you could use the AI and say, "Who is liable if I'm wrong?"
Yeah, but as I said, the damage happens actually in the course of the decision, not in the thing. On the other things, of course, I mean, you have to get into that. So we promise a certain level of accuracy into these things.
I think where it comes into play, what we'll have later on with electric vehicles or the automated driving, there's really a liability issue. Yeah.
But you can handle the claims that are coming from that in a much more efficient way.
And find somebody else responsible.
That's another point, yes. Then you don't need it. Even better, you cut corners.
More questions?
Yeah. Or maybe I can speak loud. So how do you integrate this system into reinsurer claim system, let's say? Let's say a separate website software?
Yes, that's why it is a software as a service platform. So it runs in parallel, because the integration would be, look, to adapt it to one company, to a portfolio, to do all the little specificness of it. It's a month. That's all. So it's relatively fast to have it really specific on it, also to make sure that the right data comes in and so on. But it's run in parallel when it's on this portfolio analysis view, anyhow, I mean, it stops actually there. You can see it. You can reintegrate it then into other management information systems. You can use a web interface of that. You can have it as Tableau, Power BI, all the things, the formats that you have. When it's about part of the workflow, where integration, at least in the workflow, is much more relevant to have it there, but still it's a parallel world. So the decision, once it's taken by the claims adjuster who has taken help of that, so who received the court decision, supported by the AI, looked through it, took his conclusion, said, yeah, we're gonna claim for appeal, type of thing, and he increases the reservation. That happens again back in the main system. So it's a separate system. We have one pilot now that said they look more into that thing, but we're not really aiming on the fact to have full integration, because the IT effort to make it fully integrated exceeds, it takes far too long. You can start working with that and saving money. So why then making the effort and waiting a year or 1.5 years in order that this is then part of it? The question is more interesting where it runs. This needs power, right? So it really needs processing power to do that. That's the whole equation. By the way, that's again the reason why 5 years ago it wouldn't have even made sense to discuss this. The power was not available. The processing power doubles every 6 months. Have you known that? So the available processing power on the Amazon clouds, the Azures and what have you, doubles every 6 months. So it gets much faster again and again. So it has to run into a cloud. It can run into the cloud of the insurance company. It can run in the cloud, in a separate cloud, both possible, but it needs a cloud.
If I listen to that, taking what Warren Buffett is saying, what is it? Is it cheese or a worm? I don't know if you know the saying. First, the early bird catches the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese, because the first mouse gets killed by trying to get the cheese. So that's why the second. So AI in underwriting and insurance, would you think it's more cheese or more a worm?
I think the example doesn't fit here. It is early stage, right? It is early stage.
We don't know yet if what comes out is a worm or a...
No, but look, the point is, and we do that really by doing this practically. I always say, okay, it doesn't make sense even for pilots to do then, we had one who said, let's start with 1,000 cases. And the thing, by the way, the speed to digitize in a normal speed in our environment, so no additional capacity on it, it's 3 million documents a day. Okay, and you can double it if you need to. So it's irrelevant whether you have 100,000 claims or 1,000 claims to be analyzed. But what we say is actually do something where you have a benefit of it. So where you have something to look at afterwards and say, okay, yeah, that's interesting. That's something that I want to take some information that I really wanted to know. So it's about starting. And this is, again, we all have read AI will change a lot. And I think definitely it will. I have no clue how long it's going to take. But what I see out of very practical insights is, as insurers, we are document heavy. All we do, most of the information we get comes through documents. So perfect time for us to start using it. And it's better, and whether you use us or other players in that field, get started. Wherever, but get started. Make experience with it. Electricity, which is considered to be a similar dimensional case that I will be right now, it took about 20 years. I think this time it will be a bit faster, but it took 20 years between Edison lightened up the streets and that people really used it for commercial purposes and that they changed the ways. But it's all about starting to work with it and getting it into it. And you have imminent benefits as we are document heavy.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we heard about telematics, now we heard about intelligent machines and their learning. Everything refers to the insurer's means of improving their business, but the cars themselves are growing more intelligent from day to day and are communicating between themselves. So changes are on the both sides of this business, and we will find from Mr. Frederic BRUNETEAU, Managing Director for Ptolemus Consulting Group, about the impact of the connected vehicles on the motor insurance business.
Thank you very much, Daniela. A pleasure to be here with you. I'm happy to talk about this because I think the right time. Of course, I chose the topic, so that's not random, but I think it's the right time. I'll tell you a story. I've been in the domain of, let's say, connected insurance and telematics for basically since 2009. It was my first consulting project in the domain. We've done about 95 consulting projects. And very often when I talk to insurers, they were telling me, oh, we don't need to do it because it's going to come from vehicles. And I was telling them, no, it won't. It will take a lot of time. And it did take a lot of time because it's almost still not there. So it takes a lot of time. But now, so I've kept saying, no, it's not the right time. But now I'm saying, now it's the right time. It's coming. So this will change. That's the topic of this presentation. A few words about us. We're a strategy consulting firm. We also are a market research company, and we publish a number of reports. We're about how, let's say, technology changes mobility and transportation with a big focus on insurance. We serve all the different stakeholders in the domain of mobility, insurance being one of our key segments, as you see, but also OEMs, tier one suppliers, transport companies, etc., investors, etc. We're headquartered in Brussels, but we are active in 41 countries, and we're also a very international team. And much of what I will talk about is coming from our report on connected auto insurance that we published. But we cover, as you see, many different topics, and we thought for the same reason that connected vehicles are changing the game in auto insurance. And hopefully you will agree with me at the end of my presentation. So first of all, let's talk about what's happening. This is our own forecast about the number of connected vehicles. This is worldwide, and we expect that there will be around 900 million connected vehicles by the end of the decade. Roughly, the number of vehicles then will be roughly 1.2 billion. So you'd say about 3/4 of the vehicles will be connected by then, roughly. And of course, this is worldwide. So if we zoom at European level, then you can guess most vehicles, if not more than 95%, will be connected. So we're talking about change that's going to happen within the next 5-7 years. So it's becoming something, it used to be small, it's going to be big. And so you have to have this in your motor insurance strategy. Let's maybe a quick reminder of what connected vehicle data is. Well, it's coming from the vehicle has sensors, and then it's sent to the cloud. There are embedded systems, and I think it's important to understand also that this is what's changing. Of course, we know well aftermarket telematics devices, so-called black boxes, and also our phones. The fact that it's embedded means that someone has spent the money to put the system in the vehicle. Meaning that you don't need to spend the money to invest in it, and you don't need, of course, to install it in a workshop. It's transmitted in two ways. So you can, of course, collect data, and I think most people that I hear about talking about this topic, of course, think about collecting data, but potentially you can send data to the driver. So if someone's driving too fast or dangerously, or is going to become fall asleep, you could warn him. And that's something that most companies don't think about. But for me, that's even more interesting because you can change the risk behavior. Of course, it's not automatic. I mean, you're all data guys in some way, so you know it doesn't come that easily. So you need to clean it, store it, calibrate it between different vehicles, devices to make it useful. As a maybe a piece of information about sensors, there are about a typical vehicle today 80 to 100 sensors in a vehicle. Of course, some are very technical, so the all level or etc. I mean, but you have a lot of also sensors that can be used for the risk assessment, such as, of course, accelerometers, but also temperature. If you know that the windshield wiper is actually activated, you know it's raining, etc., etc. You can know whether it's actually night or day. So you know a lot about what's happening. You can, in some vehicles, even know how many passengers there are in a vehicle. Of course, the risk for 4 passengers is not the same as the risk for 1 passenger. You can understand that, and that's, of course, quite key. The big change is that I'd say most of you still work on the basis of static data. So this is the vehicle of Mr. Schmidt, and he's 50-year-old, and he actually is a civil servant, so he is safe driver. That's the way often we look at this, or he's a young driver, so he's a dangerous guy. That's I simplify, obviously, but still most of them are done in that way. And of course, connected vehicles bring dynamic data. So you can basically see the context. So is there a lot of traffic? Is there what is the weather, etc. Is there a noise in the cabin, in the cockpit? What is the health of the vehicle? Is it damaged? Also the driver data in terms of behavior, the transactional data, you just took fuel, etc. So you can know really a lot about what's happening in the vehicle. You can know almost everything. And I'm not even mentioning cameras, but for level 3 vehicles, you will have typically an in-cab camera looking at the driver. Of course, you're not supposed to have this data come out, but you could have some metadata about this data, potentially, which means that you can already know that the person is falling asleep or doing something else, as an example. So I think it's important to look at the other part of the equation. The other part of the equation is what's in it for OEMs. We always think about insurers, but what's in it for OEMs? I think, of course, we think that they see insurance as a way to generate revenues. That's correct, but I think you can see that also as a way to generate retention. If you have a contract over the lifetime of your vehicle, then of course it's a good way to sell the next one. That's obvious. I think we've seen also with some electric vehicles the fact that OEMs are starting to look at it from a TCO point of view. Because they're expensive vehicles, if you want an insurance, typically costs you quite a lot too, and so that can be seen as braking factor for purchase. Which means that some OEMs, Tesla being the first one, basically say, I'm going to provide an insurance because the insurance is too expensive, which is, of course, directly against underwriters. So what are the choices that they have? They can do nothing. Some are still there. They can share vehicle data. They can participate in the distribution of policies, with an insurer. They can create a joint venture with an insurer. And they can also create their own solution. So we do cover in our report all of these. I will not now look at each of them, but there are many cases for each of them. Here you see some of the examples, but I think, of course, you'd say, well, what does it change? Well, of course, OEMs have been involved in insurance for a long time, but it's not exactly, it's not new in a way. GM and GMAC in the 2000s, Toyota since 99. So, what has changed? I think what has changed is the ability to use connected vehicle data. This is the big change, because they know about an accident before you do. They know that there is a claim before you do. They know what kind of claim before you do. They can decide what to do about an accident before you do. They can understand the risks of the vehicle before you do, etc., etc., etc. So that's a complete change, and that's why OEMs are entering this market. GM is one of the most prominent example with OnStar Insurance. You may have seen that Tesla acquired 2 P&C insurance companies. And we've listed a number of connected insurance programs using line-fitted systems. You have about 60 programs in the world, 60, no less than that. So it's coming, and it's a big wave. Let's have a zoom on Tesla. I think Tesla here, you know, I appreciate Tesla, but I'm not, let's say, Tesla fanatic, I would say. But still, I think it's worth looking. The premiums lower by up to 30%, and they offer policies based on driving behavior in the US. So, you know, of course, this is, they didn't try anything. You know, most insurers say, well, let's do pay as you drive, then pay how you drive. Now, they go directly for pay how you drive directly, and except in California where it's not allowed. And they provide you with something that doesn't use static data. They do not use static factors. They don't use age. So you can be a young driver, but a good driver, and they say, I'm going to look how you do it. They don't use past claims experience. They do not use a previous claims experience. Understand that. It's major change. They're probably one of the very first in history to do that. They just consider your driving behavior and the context that of the driving. And so, of course, that's they provide a discount, which is a way to, of course, to attract people. And what they do, they develop their own safety score, you know, ranked from 0 to 100. And you pay your premiums monthly on the basis of mileage and your safety score, which means that you can have you see your bill every month vary depending on how much you drove and the way you drove, which is very, very dynamic, basically. Here you see they provide all of these factors here in an app. You can have harsh acceleration, speeding events, as I would say, or harsh braking events, harsh cornering events. But also, you know, for example, if you're on autopilot, you're actually, they don't use these miles for your safety score, etc., etc. What does that give? I think you've probably seen some of these statistics about the number of crash statistics. I don't know if you've seen these numbers, but they're quite striking. And they show that with autopilot, they are about 5 to 6 times better than the average American insurer in terms of number of crashes. This is Tesla data, which I couldn't audit, so just for sake of caution. But nonetheless, you know, this is quite impressive. And even those that don't use autopilot, you see the difference about twice better than the average, you know, insurer in the US, which I think, you know, should be looked at with care. Of course, they accumulate a lot of data, I think, for autopilot. They promise the savings. They can say can go up to 60% now. And to give you an idea about the uptake of the service, you have about 70% of their car purchasers who subscribe to their insurance, which is, you know, coming from nowhere a few years ago, is a big change. And if you think about the growth of the market share, it's also, you see, it's coming quite big, and it's growing. 300 million in premiums at the end of 2022, and growing by 20% per quarter, which is showing, you know, the growth. And, you know, in an earnings call, Elon Musk was saying that he's aiming at having insurance make 40% of its revenues. So if you compare with Apple, you could say insurance is for Elon Musk what, let's say, services and streaming or for Tim Cook, you know. They are the recurring revenue part that basically goes on top of the let's say, the device or the box. Of course, the key question for everybody here is obtaining driver consent. I'm sorry, because this slide is going to look very obvious, and you all know this, but I think it's important to remind that you need to have the driver's consent, which is why most of you still don't use connected vehicle data, because you say, I cannot have the consent of the driver. And many OEMs still don't provide easy ways to obtain the consent. So I think it's important to have that. That's probably the last hurdle. But for your information, we've done a consultation of vehicle data hubs and a number of OEMs. They're all working on a consent collection engine, and actually I should say engines in the vehicle, in the display, but also in their apps and potentially through other ways. So it's coming. You're going to be able to give your consent. Yes, I'm okay to have my data to have a specific price for insurance. I will go fast here because it's quite complex. You will have these slides, but the key point here is that another issue is that OEM have the advantage of having data, but they wanted to keep it for themselves. It was so good, which is largely true. But given the regulatory context in Europe, we are seeing that this is about to change. There have been for the last 3-4 years heavy discussions between the Commission, the aftermarket sector, and the OEMs, and now it's coming to fruition. So we are. There has been the last, let's say, episode of that is that this month, in March, there was an agreement by the COREPER, which is the member states, to have an agreement on this so-called Data Act. I will zoom on this Data Act, but in a nutshell, it's about allowing users of smart devices, which can be a refrigerator, could be an oven, which can be a smartphone, which can be a car, to have access to the data. And it does insist on the fact that manufacturers of these devices sometimes have an unfair advantage. And they want to create an open market for this data, which is really what is the key. And they want to regulate for this across all the devices, not only for cars, but for many of them. So this is where the member states have agreed upon, and now it must go to European Parliament. So it's coming, I think, quite soon. This is also one of the factors why OEMs are accelerating on trying to so-called monetizing the data. And you see some initiatives that have been taking place. We've compared the offers of and let's say different factors to evaluate the readiness of OEMs to share the data, and you see there is a lot of variety in that. So it's still not there, but of course, as soon as you have a regulation, of course you will have a level playing field because everybody will have to do it. Which is. Basically the condition will be there. You'll have the ability to collect the consent. You will have the systems in the vehicles. They will all be connected, and you have regulation for you. So you will be able to collect this data. So what are the strategies? I mean, we could discuss that for a long time. In the past, big insurers like Allianz or AXA would partner with the insurer. I think it will still exist, but it's generally, I would say a thing in the past. You could have to use aftermarket devices and potentially use a CAN bus connection to have a deeper data. Again, it's still possible, but it is costly, and I think it's probably something in the past too. So what I think is going to happen is you're going to have insurers going to vehicle data hubs, and by vehicle data hubs I mean companies like Wejo, Caruso, Autonomo, that are basically connecting and collecting this data from vehicles, or directly to OEMs. OEMs, as I've just shown before, have launched their own vehicle data apps. But of course, the difference is that you could say, I want the data for all my customers. So I want data for maybe 20, 25 brands. And potentially a vehicle data hub could provide that for 20, 25 brands. So you would say, what is the brand of your car? Ford Fiesta. Okay, I have the data for your Ford Fiesta. Or I have this data and I can give you that price, which is going to be automatic. So maybe to conclude on where we're seeing this market go, this is our forecast of basically the insurance premiums to be generated by this. This is only the share that goes through vehicle.hubs, third-party vehicle.hubs. There could be direct agreements as mentioned, but we're talking already about 40 billion, so it's quite big. There are the most advanced programs are in the US today, and most, if not all, of the big OEMs there have started. In Europe, it's also moving forward. You have about more than 20 programs. I would say more at the beginning, in general, in their development. But of course, the key question is where are you? Where are you in the picture? Will you let OEMs underwrite policies on the basis of data that is much better than yours? You're bound to lose if you do that, of course. So the question is, what do you do to basically move to the next stage? So we believe that connected vehicle insurance will move from the adoption to the standard of insurance. Let's remember the beginning of the film. The beginning of the film, insurers were convinced that OEMs would come. Well, actually, they're coming. And this data is coming. Another challenge, we were talking about that over lunch, why didn't telematics go faster? Well, the main reason is economics. It was too expensive to put these devices in the vehicles. So, of course, smartphone apps are helping, and connected vehicles are also helping. On top of that, as you hear, there will be a regulation. So these data will come, and on let's say, economic conditions that will be normally fair. Meaning, it should basically pay for the cost of collecting data. There shouldn't be an undue margin by OEMs, which is really the condition that you want. And so the question is, what do you do with it? So that's why we believe that it will become the standard of auto insurance. Why wouldn't you use it, if it's not expensive? Just think about the most important data set or data point that you would like from these vehicles. Mileage. Mileage, you do it once a year. It's probably 1-2 kilobits. You send it, done. You have mileage. Cost, the economic cost is probably 1 or 2 cents. That's nothing, absolutely nothing. And of course, you could have much richer data, but it's not going to be expensive, and it's going to be available. So connected vehicles are everywhere, and data is coming. The vast majority of cars will be connected by 2030. Regulation is coming to create the level playing field, but OEMs are ahead. I mean, again, 60 programs, and of course, they know the devices. If you know your device, if you know your vehicle, you know better how to interpret it. And that's what Tesla is doing. Tesla is using its own systems, it's developing own software, own rating scoring. So of course, they will learn also what does that mean if someone activates autopilot at that time, or why not, etc. So they will understand the systems better, which is also another way they can gain an advantage. So in my view, it's time for aftermarket insurers to catch up. If we think about Tesla, they are, in my view, changing also the paradigm in the market. I heard this morning someone say, if it's pay how you drive, it's for young drivers. Nobody's going to accept that. Well, you see 17% of Tesla's customers already accepting that because they know they're going to pay less thanks to that. So it's coming, and I think we all give so much data to so many companies, and just think that many people give their face to Apple or their fingerprints to Apple, as an example, and so here we're talking about data that's not that, in my view, compared to your face, is not that sensitive, and so I think it's going to take off, and of course that's going to be used to lower the claims. So in my view, Tesla is changing the paradigm of operating insurance in the motor market. And so my recommendation to insurers is don't stay idle. It's still time to do something, but you need to define your connected vehicle strategy. the question is, how do you collect consent? That's the major question. How do you collect data? What's your strategy to collect data? And how do you use it? How do you mix it with your current models? You should try and use your existing data, of course, because that's what differentiates you from someone like Tesla. But you need already to integrate, this connected vehicle data. And of course, it will take years for you to master this data. Also, how do you integrate the connected vehicle aspects in the customer experience? When is it that you ask for consent? What do you ask? What kind of data do you want to collect? How do you present that to your customers so that they accept? That's of course quite crucial. And finally, what are the ways for you to differentiate? If you have the same data as Allianz, Ergo, or any other insurer, then how do you differentiate? For me, there are a number of possibilities. Climate management could be one. Your scoring could be one as well. Also, I think insurers could develop cross-line strategies. So, today, I'd say most insurers still exploit motor insurance separately from home insurance, from travel insurance, from health. But I think this is really what differentiates you from car makers. You have a wider scope than they have, and you could leverage that to know better your customers than they do. Plus, this is, if you think about it, still very vehicle-centric. So you could also try and play on the fact that people don't buy a vehicle, they buy mobility. And so you could go and insure for risks that go beyond just a vehicle. Okay, these are a few of my let's say, recommendations. Happy to discuss that later today if you wish, and to respond to any question. Thank you.
Thank you. Just maybe I'm wrongly informed. Tesla is not a risk carrier yet. It just has a license for a risk carrier and didn't write, I don't know if they wrote the first policy.
No, they've bought 2 insurance companies.
Yes, but they didn't start underwriting yet. So the data you have is Tesla had from the insurance, from existing other insurance companies, correct?
I think they've moved to underwriting. I could be wrong, but that's my understanding.
Just started to take the responsibility.
Yeah.
And the second point, Tesla cars are very often a total damage according to the other insurers, and Tesla is fighting that. Because Tesla is different than other electric cars. The battery is part of the construction, which means even a minor damage to the battery would be a total loss. And Tesla is fighting that. So here it's, let's say, the difference in loss costs is a technical question, not an economical question. And most big insurers in the US say, Tesla, good luck, and see what will happen, because what would be the worst case is if you repair a battery and then the car catches fire. The insurer who said, no, I'm only going to pay the repair and not the full car, will be in a bad spot. So I think...
I mean, it's a good point. I mean, I didn't mention that, but of course, as you maybe aware, Tesla manufactures electric vehicles. So effectively, you're right. The economics of the EV matter, of course. That's key. But of course, they know the systems, and they know it better than anybody else, and they can improve them. So you may have seen they've changed, for example, the architecture of the batteries very recently, as an example. So they can work on it. And I would say don't underestimate a company like Tesla. If you go and look at their, for example, investor conference document, you'll be surprised. For example, they've redesigned all the key sensors in the vehicle themselves. So, they basically try and control end-to-end the value chain, a little bit like Apple. So I would really compare them to Apple. And so don't be the Nokia of Apple. That's my opinion. And, of course, Tesla is not Apple, but, I think we have to be careful because electric vehicles will become the norm. Yeah. So if you think, for example, about charging stations today, if you look at charging stations, you often go in places, half of the parking station, if not more, are Teslas. that makes you wonder, given that most vehicles sold by the end of the decade will be electric vehicles. So it's important to, in my view, to take into account. And of course, you have other OEMs to play with. Yeah.
And the second one, where I just say good luck, or hope you're right, with that is a data question, because especially German companies have really warning flags out there. Please, please, please do a regulation, dear EU, and don't leave it to the OEMs. So hopefully we are too pessimistic there, and your optimism is met.
Well, I mean, it's a struggle between OEMs and the insurance sector.
And not the insurance, it's also the other car sectors, because the repair shops, their interest is more wide.
Absolutely. For your information, there was a CLEPA declaration today about the topic. So it's really high on the agenda. But it's definitely a big topic. But regulation will come, and I think whether OEMs want it or not, it's coming. So we still need to look at the details, of course, but you have to prepare for it, because when you have, when you are able to do it, of course, you will need to already know how to use it if you want to effectively sell policies using this data.
Okay. Any questions? Arndt?
I like your remarks with regard to what insurers can do working with other car brands. What's your take on how far the other car brands? I mean, I know that, Tesla, you said that not only reworked all the measurements and all the little things there, but they have the data, right? Because they measure everything. Mm-hmm. How ready, how prepared is the automobile industry, so the others, the non-Teslas, actually to follow up quickly about that? Because that's where the deal is actually for the insurers.
Well, Tesla, of course, didn't exist when OEMs started putting telematic devices in vehicles. First ones being Volvo and Peugeot, it was around 2000 something, So it's been for a long time. But if you think about, for example, Peugeot didn't do anything with this data, and even Volvo, they collected data, and BMW took a more aggressive stance on it. So, now they're starting to collect. BMW definitely collected a lot of data to understand the vehicle, etc., and Mercedes did that too. So, they have now some, let's say, experience in that, but they're not data-centric companies, and the data topic. When you talk to OEMs, you really understand they didn't get it. They think, oh, but we don't have a lot of time to take care of data. They seem to haven't understood that it's not about data. It's like, you say today, I don't want to work with a computer. You just have to. You just have to work with data. And you don't see that in my view in many OEMs today. So, but it's changing. It's changing fast. Mm-hmm.
Wait a second.
Yeah, maybe macro will help you.
It's helpful.
Thank you very much. You're very kind. So it's very impressive that to see what kind of insurance and reinsurance companies, risk carriers, have to take care of what we are hearing about artificial intelligence, like you said, digitalization, automatization. Let's say also one important point is not just to follow, that we have to follow. I'm coming from the reinsurance. I'm seeing also these actions as one of our competitors. Fair enough, if the car industry is starting to selling the insurance policy, buying two P&C insurers, so we have to take care also because they will take some of our industry. So what I believe it's also necessary to see what is the compatible industry which we are doing now, let's say is insurance and insurers, to maintain our position. And traveling in around 30 countries, what I'm seeing, just to share, and I really appreciate all what he's saying here, is, let's say we are dealing with the losses. It can be loss, let's say material damage in the motor, it can be also third-party liabilities or personal accidents. So we are seeing that insurance and insurance industry is investing now in the hospital clinical centers So one of the elements of this, only the challenges I asked yesterday during the ESG, is the rating. Let's say if somebody is buying now 2 insurance companies, offering such kind of capacities, if we know the solvency and everything is connected with such kinds of activities, who will make now the supervise of this as a competitors of the industry, let's say healthy competitors? So this is, I'm seeing also one of the point which, if you be so kind to elaborate from your point of view.
So if I continue the comparison with Nokia, I don't believe motor insurance will disappear. But I think the risk, I used to work in the telecom industry. If you think about the share of the Standard & Poor's index that goes to telecoms, that kept decreasing, and same in Europe, So this is what's threatening you. You're becoming commodity. And you do what basically the tech giants don't want to do. Same way, laying out the fiber, laying out the mast, telecom operators still do it, but the value they get from it is lower and lower. And that's the risk. If you're not, really involved in the data edge, this is, in my view, what could happen. On the other hand, I of course simplified it a little bit, to make it more interesting, but not all OEMs will be aggressive against insurers. So there are corporate strategies to establish. I think it's possible, of course, but it's not easy to work with an insurer, with an OEM. Sorry, it's not easy. It's not easy. Well, for the OEM, it's difficult for the insurer, but to work with an insurer too. But these OEMs generally don't fully understand insurance. Most of them, and they see that as something that comes after they sold the vehicle and under repair. So this is still a challenge. But there are many OEMs, not only one. And that's your luck. But I think, of course, focusing on Tesla, I think, is interesting because this is a worst case scenario. They do everything, they control everything, they control the system, and you can still insure a Tesla, but if they have all the best data, they will use the worst customers.
Because I'm trying to understand what will happen if Apple, let's say, buy Tesla or vice versa. So what we do now? Go back to Nokia.
No, well, for sure, if the other OEMs do the same, then you're going to have an issue, for sure. Of course, but that's why I mentioned the legal aspect, because by nature, you will be able to access this data. Okay, but you have to be prepared for it. It's not something you do at the last minute, because they are developing these models now. And Tesla is already at the 4th version of its safety score. So they keep improving it,
I'm sure that I'm taking this as a wake-up call. Yes.
A little bit, we're half an hour later than we planned. But
okay,
we'll see.
It is very interesting, but I will kindly invite you to further discuss it in the end of the conference between yourselves. Anyway, thank you very much, Frederic. And I was just thinking that while we are dreaming to the cars of the future and their private conversation of the roads, and the machines are doing a lot of intelligent things for us, life is going by and it's happening every day, and it's challenging with the it's challenging the industry in the economic direction in a very important way. And inflation is the public enemy #1 in this moment. And for the insurers in the Central and Southeastern Europe, it's very important, because here we have witnessed in these economies, we have witnessed inflation rates very high, much higher than in the Western Europe and in the Eurozone. And Turkey is an extreme example in this area because really there it's quite dramatic what is happening in this respect. But what is a good thing, I think, is that insurers still find solutions to survive and manage this phenomenon. And we will find out how, maybe to inspire us for our own issues, from Mrs. Menekşe UÇAROÐLU. She's CEO of the IUC Group in Turkey. IUC is a consultancy and management consultancy group. Is closely linked to the insurance industry in Turkey. So Menekşe knows in a direct way what is happening and what are the difficulties and the solutions adopted. Menekşe, the floor is yours.
Hello. Thank you very much, Daniela. Can I use this? Okay. All right. Still, I have some audience. I hope you are awakened. Hello, my dear. Okay, Daniela, thank you for the presentation. Yes, I'm coming from the survivors' land. And unfortunately, I would have preferred to be presented in another characteristics or in another success stories. But today I'm with you and I will speak about the inflation that we are facing in Turkey and its impact on the motor business, which today you have listened from Akif Bey, how important is the motor business in Turkey, and how much loss we have made last year, and also the implication on the technical and marketing aspects. First of all, I'm trying to... Let me do it this way. Okay. Now, inflation in Turkey, this sentence is in itself really very self-explanatory because it's our agenda in all the houses, everywhere. Whenever two people, they come together, we discuss inflation. We had an experience with inflation for earlier years, but the last 2 years really was a disaster. Today I will tell you about what is going on in Turkey, how it's the impact on the motor pricing and the technical results. Then I will tell you how we cope with it day by day, and I will tell you some interesting solutions from marketing aspect also. Yes, now after 2001, I'm trying to follow up from my own telephone, sorry. Yes, after 2001 until very recent, the inflation was 1 digit. And it was a success of the government and we were all very happy. Then in year 2017, it had started to little bit move. Between 2018 and 2020, it reached 20%. And despite the fact that we were in the pandemic, and everybody was in their houses, because of some monetary decisions and the decision of the government of not increasing the interest rates of the banks, the hard currency started to increase, and we were watching from our houses. And then by the end of the 2021, the inflation became 36%. And everybody was telling to each other what is going on and what will happen. And then this devaluation, the increase in oil and gas prices, and the COVID-19 crisis put us in a situation by the September 2022, we had an inflation of 83.5%. I'm laughing because there's nothing you can do, so we were laughing. And we expected that the government will do something, but they didn't increase the interest rates. So they decided that the interest rates will not be increased, and still it's not increased. So this budgeted inflation was around 21, but the happening inflation was 60% more. this was not at all expected. In Turkey, we are really ready to various things because, you know, we have earthquakes, we have bombings, we have coup d'etats, we have several events which is happening in 1 year or in 2 years' time. So by the resiliency point of view, we are quite resilient, but such an outcome was not expected, and it had devastating solutions. Around 100,000 small, medium-sized corporations, they bankrupt. Many of them bankrupt. Some of them, large ones, actually when you go and when you see their balance sheets, actually they are bankrupt, but you don't see it because, of course, the life goes on. So this inflation and the euro, which became, you see the euro increase in recent years, and now 1 euro is 20 lira something. And this is horrible because for many years it was around 3 lira. 3 years ago it reached 6 lira, 7 lira, and suddenly 20 lira. This means that, for example, a very small bottle, even it's very, very, very expensive compared to Turkish lira. And being a tourist abroad or visiting abroad is not important, but anything in Turkey is adjusted by currency. So this had a negative impact on the inflation, plus the interest rates and the spare parts, which we are coming to our major subject. The spare parts and the technical results were also very bad. And you see that the market combined operating ratio for motor increased by 19 points in Q2 of 2022 to 135%, 0.8. So yes, it's a disaster. So we see that the loss ratio, motor casco loss ratio is 103%, but the motor casco operative combined operating ratio is 135%. And afterwards, let's check the premiums. Of course, we are increasing the premiums, but you can imagine that at a stage, premiums are so high that people started not to buy their policies because it's not possible to pay it. There is one big issue in Turkey. Nobody buys policy with a deductible. Actually, policy with a deductible would be a good solution to that. For example, my policy, my motor policy is with deductible because I say it like that. But general people on the street, even businessmen, even bank people, no one is buying with deductible. And it's something without logic because in such an expensive situation, such a high inflation, at least if they buy with a deductible, they can cope with the premiums, and this is good for the insurance company as well. But they don't buy it. So the average casco premium reached 5,600 lira, and in 1 year's time, it has tripled. 3 times, everything is tripled. Actually, in Turkey, anything 100 lira is now 300 lira. This is for anything. The food, anything you can think of. It's 3 times increased. So, what has been done in insurance market? How do we cope with it? What is our process, daily process? Now, before in Turkey, there was an inflation, and we were used to work with inflation. We know how to cope with it. But at that good old days, there was financial income because the bank interests were high. So we were not making money from technical side, but we were having some income from the financial side. And finally, combined ratio was in a limit, was enabling us to live our lives. But now there is no financial profit. Nothing. So anything needs to be technical. When you increase prices 3 times, and when it keep increasing each month, it's very difficult to. So we are just, it's like chasing your own tail. We are just chasing ourselves. At that stage, we have early detection mechanisms and determination of loss cost and the amount that we will pay for claims is a major target, and this is an ever-changing and ever-increasing atmosphere in terms of cost. So what is happening? That the market is using some central information data which is coming from the Insurance Information and Monitoring Center, which I will mention in a short while. There is an entity in Turkey who is sharing the whole data, who is processing them, and it is helping the insurance company day by day, each day, to see what is going on outside, the benchmarking, the average premiums, average losses, and it is segmented by the regions, by the drivers. So each day there is an issue of tariff monitoring in insurance companies in Turkey. So they apply instant and segmented tariff management, and the claims initiatives is always on the agenda. People are always trying how we can make our claims handling better, how we can cut the cost down, and we are focusing on the mobile repair, of course. Now, the companies which has large motor portfolios, the big ones with large motor portfolios, they have specific teams, actuarial teams, and specific auditing teams only specified for motor. And we call them motor logistic departments. They check everything, and they give immediate notice to the underwriter when a spare part company decides to increase in their spare parts. It's all immediately given notice to the underwriters, and let's say if this is a Lada or any other factory, immediately the tariff is changing. So at the end of each month, an actuarial data is collected, and everybody comes together and they discuss. But this is regular activity. For example, yesterday we were discussing with Süha from Eureko. He said that each month we do a regular checkup, but each 15 days we do a short survey, plus daily we are checking our competitors. So each 15 days they are collecting around 5,000 offers from the benchmark, which they check and they try to see what is going on. So what I'm trying to say that we are not in a position to make a tariff and to sit and maybe to focus on other things like this, Tesla or AI or telematics. We are in a jungle, in a survivor mode, as if there is a fire in the middle of your house. So thinking of betterments is a luxury for the time being. So there are always review meetings. And especially these 2 years, technical teams really sometimes daily they do the tariff upgrade. Now, when we come to this Insurance Information and Monitoring Center, we are really grateful that it is there. It is actually set up in year 2003 with the name of Tramer. The major aim and the initial aim was to manage the traffic MTPL claims at that time, especially for fraud, because before this institution, same claim was collected from 3, 4, 5, 6 different companies because everybody sees the papers. But after Tramer was set up in year 2003, everything was under control. Then the name of this center has changed to the Insurance Information Center in year 2008, and 3 years later it changed to Insurance Information and Monitoring Center. And it's gradually broadened the scope. Today it's not only limited to motor insurance. In all lines of business, they are monitoring the market, the whole data, the whole policies, everything. Daily, real-time, online is going through this center, which is analyzing them and giving back to the insurance market. So as an insurance company, you can always go there and you can see all the average and where you stand and what is of course, they don't give the name, but they say company A, company B, but you can see the competitors as well. So it's open to, of course, it's open to only to insurance companies and the regulators. And this portal is really ensuring that all claims data and premium informations and material claims, loss adjuster reports, all the informations are there and shared by the insurance companies. Plus, the portal can be used by the people who would like to check whether there was a claim before, whether there, for example, you want to buy a car, you go there and you can check whether there was a claim before. This is for the public. The same system, also they accumulate the data from the insurance sector in a single center, and it's very safe. That's why the insurance companies, they are easily giving their information, and the target of this sector is to increase the confidence in the insurance sector, preventing the misconduct. Because as everything is shared by this center, the insurance companies also, they act in coordination with the rules, and they assist also the activation of the supervision office. These are the reports that, there are several reports. All of them was in Turkish, and I just want you to understand how it works. Each day, in real time online, you can go there and you can see what is going on in the market, how many spare parts are used for how many cases, what is the cost of the original producer or sub-industry producer. You can see all this is one of the tables. There are hundreds of different reports, plus all companies can go in and you can just have your own report. So you can generate your own report within the data and you can use it on your own small room, let's say. So this high quality market data help the motor lines for the production, and the technical capabilities is increased. Plus, from there you can see the results for the different level of no claim declaration, the type of usage, city, everything is there, and the market share of the competitors, which I already mentioned. Yeah, and the underwriting team monitors average cost and frequency development monthly basis in all the segments. So what they do monthly, as I said, monthly, half monthly, and daily, they are reviewing the results. Reserving and risk management teams, in most of the companies, maybe in the small ones you cannot see separate reserving and risk management team, but in the large ones, surely there are. They analyze all the claims. Claims teams inform them. And we do monthly inflation loading. Now in Turkey, we are not putting anymore the sum insured of the car on the policy, because on the day of the policy it's 100,000 lira, and 2 months later it's something else. So what we do, we charge the premium, we don't write the sum insured because it is indexed to inflation, and in case of the claim, we pay the market price. That's why you don't see it on the policy, and the standard monthly inflation for the time being is 4-5%. And each month it's increased, it's continuing like this. So for some brands, in some cities, there are also additional loadings, because as you know well, not all the brands are performing the same. So we do the crash analysis, because 2 cars is crashing, but it depends which mark is crashing which mark, and the results is totally something else. Also, it depends which part of the country. Also, it depends. So it's really a day-to-day analysis, and the benchmark is also very important. At the end of the day, we are in a very, very competitive market. So this instant and segmented tariff management, they use the claim types, they model them, because not all of them have the same inflation. For example, a crash collision compared to a glass claim or a total loss, the inflation is not the same, because someone is using too much spare parts, then the claim file is more expensive than you expected, because suddenly the there's this increase in the spare parts, but the total loss can be sometimes better than having a partial loss. And declared inflation and the claims inflation are not the same. And to see the correct inflation level, they constantly do modelings in their actuarial departments. And we use the most recent CAR values instead of the values to calculate the premium on the policy, as I told you, because if not, we cannot capture the inflation. So we are coming to interesting subject. As we are living in desperate times, there are desperate solutions. For example, one of the insurance companies in Turkey, last year, they bought $4 million spare parts. They checked their results, they know their portfolio, and they said, okay, in 1 year we will use this much spare parts. So they bought it upfront, $4 million spare parts. They put it in a warehouse, and they made special policies with more competitive prices, and they said, if you go to my agreed repair shops, you will pay less, and when people go to these shops, they send the spare parts via their own team, and they benefited a lot because, can you imagine, 4 or 5% monthly, almost 40, 60% in a year, and they paid upfront. But the size, this was a sizable insurance company ranking around 15th, 10th, something like this. But for the big ones, they need to put 20, 25, maybe $30 million. I hope the people, you are listening to me? Thank you very much. Can you see, the bosses are not listening to me.
Organizing issues.
Okay. So, I'm finishing, don't worry. I make it fast? Yeah, okay, yeah. Yes, now I'm trying to make it fast because I'm the last speaker, so the most difficult part. For marketing aspect, first of all, new products with deductibles, as I mentioned, with the agreed partners, it's one way which insurance companies are choosing to do this, because there you can also manage the fraud, and it's important for managing the fraud. Plus, what they do, these repair shops are not the branded repair shops. These are, like the sub-industry, these are non-branded repair shops, which use equivalent spare parts and which are repairing several brands. So what they do, they tell them, I will give you the spare parts, and you will give me best prices for your man work, and then you will receive a lot of car, you will make a lot of business, but you will give me a huge discount, which in return they give it to their clients so that they can keep the portfolio. And the other way is a little bit similar to what we have listened from Matteo today, some additional services to Casco products, bundled to the Casco products, but these are not discounts, sometimes discounts, but most of the time, these are free services. For example, if my Casco was 100 lira, but now I need to charge you 300 lira, at least I can give you a present to ease your pain. So, for example, I tell you, buy from me your automobile policy, and I will make a free checkup. You will not pay anything. Or you will have a winter tire storage, so you will not pay for it, I will store it for you. Or an oil and gas discount. Each time you buy, you will pay 5% less, but if you go to this shop. Or a free car wash, for example. I give you each month, one time, free car wash. But if you buy this policy. Of course, these are done by some companies. My company is one of them. Assistance company. For example, we have 43 insurance company as my client. We give them several services, not only for motor. What they do, they buy from me 2,000 of these services, which we manage with the service provider with a very, very minimum fee. Plus, we make some calculations, and then they give it to 50,000 people. What we chase the frequency limit, and then if it's coming to an end, they buy another one. So they say to 50,000 people, you have a free checkup for your car, but they pay 2,000 of it. And for the time being, these are the strategies that they use to attire client, to keep the client. The most important thing for us for the time being is to keep the clients. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for your patience.
Any questions? Yes.
Thank you very much, Menekşe, for the very honest,
Thank you.
transparent.
Yeah.
If you allow me, just sincere condolences to our people lost in the recent earthquake.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So what we are seeing, we have a lot of comfortable life in Europe in this side. I'm coming from Slovenia.
Yes.
You put us a little bit in the reality. Most of the risk which you mentioned is out of our control, like economy, inflation. We cannot do so much except we have to do internal work, so I really congratulate you for a very deep, simple explanation of very important topics. If you allow me the question which is connected with the natural catastrophe which occurred, if you be able to share with us some data about the impact on the, let's say, on the motor industry regarding the recent earthquake.
Actually, I didn't bring with me. I'm sorry because the focus was not on earthquake. So let me not give you any figure, but I can tell you that all the cars are damaged. And the region is 10 cities, as big as a little bit bigger than Azerbaijan, and 13 million people, 13 million people were living there. And 3 or 4 of these 10 cities were industrial cities, full of factories, full of wealthy people, people with jobs, intellectual property, engineers, etc. So minimum, each of the family has one car, sometimes more, and all the buildings, they collapsed over the cars. So there is a huge loss for motor. But compared to the losses there and the people which lost their lives and the real loss, no one is speaking about it. As Akif Bey said today in the morning, we don't speak about it. No, it's like it does not exist. It's the other part is so bad that no one is speaking about motor, not even mentioning it.
Thank you, Menekşe, for the honest approach. Thank you.
Because we have spoken so much about technology today, is in this battle with the inflation and keeping as much as possible the technical indicators in a reasonable range, is technology of any help besides the contribution of the information and monitoring center? So keeping costs lower or lowering the costs. Have you seen this trend of using more intensive technology or implementing?
Actually, all the technology so far is used for the collection of data and understanding it, but not in the sense that we are discussing. Of course, we have some products, some companies have some products like pay as you go, but there is one burden in Turkish market. If it is done by the telephone, it's not a problem because everybody has a telephone. If you chase them from your telephone, it's okay. But if you are speaking about a gadget which will be put in your car, even this gadget is like 40 euro, it is still expensive for an insurance company to subsidize. So you need because just 2 months ago, a company come to visit me because if someone has a new project, they always come to me. This is good, but I wasn't so good with them. I told them insurance companies will not pay it. But he's explaining to me all the benefits. The problem is that insurance companies are not making money. In order to pay for something like that, at least you need to have a budget. That is why we are in such a difficult situation. As I mentioned, there is a fire in the middle of your living room. So you cannot discuss, maybe I should have a better refrigerator which will spend less electricity. This is something like that. I mean, everybody knows that it's necessary, but the agenda is totally different. And if with telephone, yes, you can change. But if you speak of, or when the factories will issue some car, produce some cars with some gadget in it, surely insurance company will follow, because we have pay as you go. But if, for example, Eureko Sigorta, where Suha was from, they have introduced this pay as you go 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. Maybe 2,000 people bought this policy. Little bit classical market, still. Thank you very much.
There is always time to learn new things and to decide to adopt and expand them. Thank you very much, Menekşe. It was quite enlightening. And at this point of closure, I invite you to draw the conclusions, and to do that we will need the help of some of our speakers today. So I'm inviting to the panel of discussions Matteo Carbone and Arndt GOSSMANN again, and then Mr. Luka PRELEVIC, Head of International Growth for Hellas Direct, and Mr. Christoph KONASZ, Professional Insurance Non-Life Retail within VIG Versicherungstechnik Retail. I hope I managed to say it. And Mrs. Maria Altuber-Greismeier, Head of Motor Insurance Department within the local insurance associations. So here is the team for drawing our conclusions today. Please.
Yeah, we'll have a panel discussion for that. And well, I want to start with a question which relates to the electric vehicles, the battery. If you look, before I came here, I looked what happened really on Felicity Ace. I don't know if you know this ship, 4,000 vehicles on there, Volkswagen Group, that caught fire on the 16th of February and sank on the 28th of February. Most likely, and nobody knows, and this is for me fishy, most likely it was some Bentleys, electric Bentleys, that burned and you cannot extinguish. And one expert who told me it's the nature of lithium-ion batteries that you cannot extinguish them, so you have to let the car burn. So just take a situation, you have a high-rise building, luxury building, and you have 100 cars parked, 80 of those are electric, so in the year, let's say, 2030, and the fire starts. All the firemen I talk to, they say, can't do anything, let it burn. So maybe it's $100 million or $200 million, I don't know. On the other side, we see Tesla not using or reusing their batteries. And third, we hear manufacturers of batteries, they say, yeah, we're improving, we're improving. So the question is, where are we going in this situation? And is it not very premature to say we will only build electric cars when we don't have one of the key elements resolved? And so what is the opinion, especially those who didn't talk to before? Maybe Maria?
I can start, yeah.
Yep.
But when it comes to battery, then there's so large issues we deal with when it comes to loss adjustment, lost costs, and so on, because the uncertainties are like what we experience very high. Yeah? We have a lot of different rulings from manufacturers, yeah, how to deal with batteries in case of damages of different kinds. So there is huge yeah, let me put it like uncertainty, yeah, in a loss event. Yeah, it starts with the first responder, yeah, having the responsibility to decide what to do, yeah, with this vehicle, yeah, on a very short period of time. Yeah, then you have to monitor the battery, probably like of a long period of time after an accident happens, and that's why, of course, costs are increasing, yeah, and all what we have to reserve, yeah, as motor insurers, yeah, is not so easy, yeah, to foresee, yeah. that's why we aim for like predictable rules when it comes to liability, when it comes to measures you have to take in an event of accident, and yeah, that's what we are dealing with. Yeah, a lot of things are okay.
Yeah, and well, if you look at countries like Britain, where they had a little earlier start, the average loss costs for electric vehicles is slightly higher than for a normal combustion engine. In Germany, we have the opposite. We have, for some vehicles which are high enough in the type class tariff, they're one tariff class better than their combustion counterpart, mostly because they drive less kilometers. But on the battery, what is your opinion?
Thank you. You kind of need to look at it from a big picture and over time. I think today what you're saying is very right, and certainly the severity of damages is much higher, even though the frequency is potentially not on electric cars as a whole. The question is whether the battery technology will change over time, and that's something where I would also be looking. So what I'm seeing in the venture capital world is that it's changing rapidly. I don't think it's something that will change the next 5 years, but between 5 and 10 it will definitely change.
So you think it will be not an ion battery?
There's a very high possibility, but it's very tough to estimate it.
Okay. You have to see the ion battery was invented more or less in its present form for the Apollo program. In the early 60s. And there has been no real technical progress since then on the battery side. So that makes it maybe a little bit more pessimistic. So maybe from you as an answer. And then
well, I think the lower premium because of short distance is true for MTPL, but not for MOD business. So this I can understand. And yeah, looking at Vienna Insurance Group, which I'm representing, we have seen in the presentation of Swiss Re today the map. In the CE and SE region, we saw a single-digit share of e-vehicles. So it's very difficult, and I agree with you, Maria. We right now have a lack of data, so we don't have the experience regarding claims. We are now starting with collection of data and then to have a group-wide initiative, because it will come. We know legislation in European Union has made it more or less clear. In 2035, new cars will not be anymore sold with combustion engine, and so we have to deal with it and we have to prepare.
So, for the next question, because here I just hope we don't get a big loss somewhere, because this would be a mess. The insurers and reinsurers would have to react and take out, and you will have signs, no electric cars, no electric powered cars. There is a Norwegian ferry company that already has it, no electric cars. So, especially in Norway.
Progressive is not insuring Tesla.
Yeah.
We are happy that they are insuring themselves.
Yeah, exactly. This is maybe also an interesting point. Okay, now the second technological really breakthrough in the car is the self-drive, the ADAS features that have progressed over time. Now, if you look at the ADAS features, at least that's what my agent or my mother, who's living in the US, who was living in Pennsylvania, said, it doesn't matter with that car, with that Honda, it doesn't matter who drives it. So my mother is an old lady, and she doesn't get a surcharge because the car is driving so much automatically that she got it as if she was a young person, not a very young person, a normal mid-aged person. Now, we have telematics, which is driver-oriented. We heard from Turkey, they are going over the driver orientation. We have the vehicle orientation. At the end of the day, self-driving vehicles totally. And then we have the data around it via AI that can be put into the pricing selection process. Now, from each of you, an opinion. Which will be the dominant one? Will there be a dominant one? Will it be all at the same time? If it's all at the same time, as a consumer protector, I would say, hey, guys, do you need so many data just for a motor insurance? Isn't that a little bit much? Could you not reduce that? So maybe, Arndt, you could start.
Well, the essence and the benefits are really in the combination of these things. It's not if it is the one or the other. What you get earlier together, because whatever you have the data already, or you have to produce the data, that's a different thing then. I think it's not a question of prioritization, which is going to be the data. Take as much as possible into this thing. You're right. The biggest discussion is probably with data protection, and to make them understand and to make it transparent to them, it's proprietary data still, and it's to the benefit of the consumers, not to their disadvantage. All right, so if the driving behavior is much better. One very little story, if I may. A couple of months ago, I switched on the TV, German TV, late at night. There was an investigative format on the second channel. I was amazed because it was an accident of a Tesla car, and the poor guy, the poor driver of the Tesla thing, was almost made fully liable for an accident with a motorbike. Thanks to all the camera stuff, he could prove the responsibility was fully with the motorbike driver. And I thought, fantastic, and I was about to switch on, and then the main part of this issue started, because they said, how can it be that this is under data protection? The motorbike driver should have agreed first that he's going to be filmed while he crashes into the car. We have to overcome these discussions, right? That's a lot of bullshit still. Of course we will. Of course we will. Of course we will, because the variety of the countries, there will be different speeds. Probably Germany is going to be the last one, but I don't know.
Okay, maybe in between, Matteo, because you say everyone is telematics. Now, then the consumer protection people will say, wait a second, you take the type of car into consideration as well, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so how do you see it? Will the telematics be on the long and really long run? Was automatic driving necessary at all? Because every driver is a passenger.
So let's talk about what is automatic driving, because on a hat, in a conversation, you can say that autonomous level 2, where you have the steering that a little is helping you, is autonomous, is not. No, level 5, you are a passenger, where there is no wheel. This is the moment where I'm not interested about personal auto. So currently the estimations are around 2040, 50, that you will have a material 10–15% penetration in a Western country of autonomous level 5, with a big question mark. Today there is a news that Ford stopped their programs and say, oh, we need to think about if this is a timeline that works well or not. So my point is, you have 30 years at least where to do money, you need to work well with telematics. Then after 30 years, we will see.
So you would say if it's level 3 or 4, you would have a discount maybe because the frequency is less?
I'm saying that today the players that used well telematics data showed that between a good driver and a bad driver, you have a difference in the loss ratio of 200%, relatively. The Swiss Re analysis showed that a good ADS system provides a better safety 50% than a worst, the worst ADS system. These two things should be considered together. As said by Progressive in their earning call, the limit is where the regulator let you segment. Until that limit, we were doing it.
Other opinions, especially on the number of data fields coming in?
Just a comment on the regulation issue, because that's what you encouraged us as insurance industry to use data, yeah, to use AI. But yes, as we all know, we are a strong regulated field still, and I hope that regulation goes in the direction supporting us in using all the potential we see in this, and also to support the consumer. Yeah, just a comment. Maybe you want to add something?
Yes, I mean the point is actually yes, and the point is here to enter, that's what we started to do actually, to enter into conversation with the regulators proactively into this. The good thing about that is that insurance regulation across Europe is so intense and it's so much depending on the data. There is a certain sympathy for this data collecting. That I already can say. I don't have official views of the regulators, but they're not against using the data.
They're against using too many data.
A regulator, an insurance regulator, as unfortunately Carol is gone, but an insurance regulator per se wants the company to use all the data that they have. Because that's about protection.
As long as a price differentiation is not too big.
Yes.
Because if you have accumulation, like take your example, bad driver, old car. So you have maybe a...
No, but the question is, what are you doing with it? Right? So first of all, using the data to make the tariffs better, or using the data to better assess the risk situation of a portfolio, of a company, is good, and the data belongs to the insurance companies. What, and also if you look through the Data Protection Acts, what should not happen, rightly so, is that any company, insurance company, takes their data from claims, whatever, and then sells it in order to make something with it, or to sell new products or from other companies and so on. That is forbidden. It is not forbidden to use data.
Okay, I'll give you 3 examples what is forbidden. To rechange within hours the pricing. So the dynamic pricing has been abandoned by several countries. Anything which is gender correlated, like shoe size. Actually, a Swiss insurer Swedish insurer used shoe size and said people with bigger feet are worse drivers because it's men on statistical base. So they want less. And the third is, if the vehicle data is enough, why do you need to collect personal data? So if the German association more or less has a very, very complex tariff class by car type tariff system, and this works okay, and say, why do you want to do more? Why do you need personal data on top? So there is interference in that. It may,
of course there is, but still, the bottom line is the more you have, the better you can be, the better you can manage the business.
As long as you don't differentiate.
And there has to be limitations to it, fine. I mean, there are other things to be done. Look, we want ESG type of thing. Without collecting then more data on what's happening on that, it would not be possible. We cannot have it all, right? So okay. I think it's a maturity question. We need to survive a couple.
Other opinion here?
I tend to agree on many countries with his perspective. It's true that you have limits, but are topics, typically they are country specific. So in Italy you have the discrimination you are meaning, but geographical. You are saying even if you have identified that in the south you should charge more, the regulator say, no. Doesn't exaggerate, put some limit. But at the end, it's not saying don't use the data. It's the outcome. At the end, it is saying mitigate somehow the results. Mm-hmm. Germany is for sure one of the countries that in the data usage is challenging more insurers. UK is the country where you are more free to change overnight the tariff. So at the end, there are different focus in the different markets. US is all about discrimination.
Yeah. Well, we have, if you look at the legal situation in the UK, there is a lot of things now going on with discrimination. You know, for example, if it goes by the address, you may not allow to use the address because if you have an address in a poor area, the average premium will be much higher than it's in a middle class area. So you're not allowed to use that. You're not allowed to charge somebody who is an existing client more than a new client. So that's the second one that has been decided. This is already over. You may not discriminate age as per se. So you need something like telematic data to be allowed to use age at a certain point.
On the age, I can challenge. The UK insurers are still using it.
Yeah,
they didn't touch it.
Okay. So you have any opinion on that?
In general, I agree. Yeah, because all the data which is used for risk-based pricing should be okay. Yeah, and a region can also have an issue when you observe a lot of or high frequency and high severe claims, then of course there is a reason for a pricing differentiation. And again, it's a matter of data. And I think it doesn't matter if you get it from connected cars or through your own telematic app. You need to prove for which reasons you use the data, and I think then there is also no problem with supervisory authorities.
Consumer protection. I think supervisory authorities may be fine.
Yeah.
We understood that you don't like that insurers use telematics.
Yes, but I mean, the point is how, I mean, as I said, it is a discussion to be held. Because consumer protection, I mean, if consumer protection means that in order to protect certain groups, which evidently, for whatever reason, they might not be responsible for that, but they have a higher risk into that, and then they should not be discriminated, and this is then overwhelmed on the rest of the insured. Sorry, I mean, this has nothing to do with insurance solidarity. This is not consumer protection, this is just the contrary. But the insurance industry has to be very vocal. I'm missing them to be vocal about it. We just listen. And then we say, yeah, okay, that we should do that. That's wrong. If somebody's a bungee jumper, nobody cares whether this is a minority, which is priced higher in the accident insurance. Good damn.
Okay. Well, maybe next time we have some consumer protection person leading the discussion here. Yeah, it is. Okay, another one has a little bit to do with consumer protection, but is a lot of marketing and maybe something of the future. Using used parts. We had what is done in Turkey to curb the costs and maybe give a rebate. So there was recently from several countries studies to do that, yeah, and say, well, it's perfectly safe to use a used part, depends on what part it is, and therefore save costs, and it's also environmentally friendly. So suddenly you can use the environmental side. Before, the insurers were the bad guys, wanting to use spare parts, but now it's environmentally friendly. So, any comment on that one?
I think, or we all know, the insured should not be better or worse off after the claim than before. And so why to use for a 10, 15-year-old car a brand new part? So I think it's a logical approach. It's not familiar for Austria, Germany, and other Western European countries, but when we have a look at Southeastern European countries, it's already done like this, yeah. And Menekşe gave us the presentation, and this is quite the same in countries like Bulgaria, Romania, and so on, also in the Western Balkan countries. So. And to transform it also to Western European countries, what you've mentioned, the ESG, the green product approach will be very beneficial, because there will be client segments which have an interest, which like to afford maybe also MOD coverage for their pretty old car. And they will get a special tariff rate for this, because it will be agreed in the beginning, before concluding the policy, we will use used parts. And
could that be a product interesting really for insurance?
In my opinion, yes.
Yeah. Any opinion?
I think definitely, and I mean to Christoph's point, there are maybe two aspects that are important about it. One is the transparency, so the customer needs to know that you're going to use the spare parts. There are actually some insurers that actually sell riders for using OEM parts, so they're charging extra to use OEM. I'm not sure that this is a viable strategy, but that's, I think, as a point is definitely valid. The other problem is a situation that I had when somebody crashed into me was that I was made to go and find the used part. And for my car, that part was very rare. Luckily, I was a lawyer before anything else, so I solved it in a different way. But where an insurer doesn't provide also the service, it makes the industry look bad, and especially makes the insurer look bad. So that service level of helping the customer or the claimant actually find those spare parts and kind of having those integrations is something that is very useful.
And let's say looking now at that's old cars, and maybe it will be also a measure, like with washing machines, that it has to be repair cost friendly. The design of a car. To take the classical one, the headlight, you can only exchange the whole thing and have to throw out everything. Is that really necessary? The manufacturers say no. If it's screwable, of course you have to have then something protecting against moisture, etc. But it could work. So I'm also meaning the design of a car. Would that change anything?
I think when it comes to spare parts or used parts, you have first of all to decide legally. Of course, if you have casco or MTBL, yeah, there's different issues, yeah, with all the options you have or not, yeah. And then also again, regulation, yeah, has to help us with sustainability. ESG, of course, helps us, but also when it comes to design protection, you know, we need a repair clause and in a way, yeah, that covers vehicles where we can be protected from OEMs telling us we need, you know, a special BMW whatever part. Yeah. So yeah, let's see where. But I think the direction is a good one. Yeah. Why not?
We have a contradictory development from the producer side. On example, I've overseen something, an obstacle with my car. I went into that while parking. Okay, I bring it to the repair, I bring it to the, because it was relatively new, so I bring it to the company, whatever it was, a Land Rover thing. I said, look, do that. They mentioned to me a price, and I thought, come on, it just scratched a little bit. I'm not want to change the motor of that. I complained. I went to the managing director of that place, and he said, the problem is, we don't even have the people. What we do is this little scratch in the door, we don't take the door, repair it, and don't even have the people. We order a new door, takes 8 weeks, we just color it here, and then we put it in. So you pay the entire backside door. And then he gave me a little piece of paper with a telephone number of a whatever free repair shop somewhere, and he said, ask them. I mean, I paid 1/3 of it because they did it the old way. From a production, from an automobile perspective, it's counterproductive that way, because it's more efficient for them to just reproduce the car parts and then to change.
And they earn more.
Yeah, yes, it's even prohibitively more expensive if they do these things, because more people, more whatever type of thing.
So we can expect some changes here, and here the insurers can be the good guys, I think, yeah, if we do the communication right. Okay, last question, and that's the full round. I didn't find when Matteo first time presented, but I think it was 12 years ago when you were.
It was 2015.
15.
Which month?
So eight years.
April. No, it was this
It was
period.
spring. It was spring. It was spring. Yeah, it was spring.
Bulgaria. Was in Bulgaria.
Eight. Yeah. Okay. 8 years ago. But even if I look back when I've cleaned up certain papers 10, 15 years ago, there was always talk about many changes. But at the end of the day, not that much changed. If I look at the key parameters for pricing, which we use in Germany, which is very structured, even the influence of those factors has not changed that much. Now, you read, oh, the motor insurance premium will go down dramatically, automatic driving. There will be OEMs taking up the insurance. So we have a multitude of factors which will reduce the premium. Now, taking 15 years from now, 2038, where do you think the premium volume in motor is? MTBL and casco. I'm talking now about $1 trillion for the world. So will it be less than $1 trillion? Will it be more than $1 trillion? Maybe more than $2 trillion? What do you think? Is that a market where you would send your kids into? And I
take it. And I totally agree with you about that we are hearing similar things for years, but even more. We have heard that OEMs will triumph. I have a collection of vintage articles from 100 years ago in the US saying OEMs are coming to take insurance. In the 40s, GM was the 5th auto insurer in the US. It was successful. Then they sold it because it was not their core business.
Ford was number 3 in 1981.
So this is the point. I think that in 15 years, probably the trillion will be almost there. Maybe will be less premium. There will be a little more component of services. This is my prediction.
And better margin?
With the services for sure.
Okay. Your opinion?
each and every OEM will need to have a risk carrier in the back. If it's a direct insurer or a reinsurance company, so there will be business for the insurance industry. So here I'm pretty confident. I cannot give you any number regarding premium volume.
Estimate. What do you think?
I think there will
Daddy, should I become an insurer?
There will be a shift when we talk in extremes. When there will be autonomous driving, the level 5. Then we don't talk about MTPL anymore. Then we talk about product liability. So there will be a shift from motor to product liability business. So there will always be a need for insurance.
Yeah, but honestly, you take the aviation industry. Big planes, when they came up in the late 40s, were crashing left and right. Yeah. So if you look at the first Clipper plane at transatlantic from PA, they had 18 planes, 17 crashed. Of the 18 within 5 years. So
risk profile will be totally different.
Today it doesn't happen. Yeah. And
no, the frequency will go down, but when an accident happens, then it will be a fatal one. So this is for sure, and this needs to be considered in pricing. But this is an extreme scenario, so please don't interpret it. This is my favorite.
No, but where would you see? Where would you see the? Of course, it's depending on parameter. But where do you see we are actually will be in 15 years?
I think the services are very important. So it will be somehow a diversification from insurance point of view. Yeah, and even with talking about services closely related with our core business, but not only. Yeah, so we didn't mention the buzzword ecosystems today, but it is an important topic. Yeah, and I think insurance industry will be dealing with it, and we are also quite innovative. Let's see.
Okay. What do you think, Luka?
So I think MTPL overall will definitely exist. The risk profile will change. We'll have some autonomous car. We'll have a lot more electric vehicles. That's all true. I think definitely the point is that the insurers will need to find a way to innovate. I'm not sure that on the MTPL product itself there can be way more innovation than what we just discussed, basically. But I think where there can be a lot of innovation is indeed the ecosystem and adding services on top. For example, Hellas Direct has Wallet Plus, which is a financing solution, and not only just for the MTPL or for the policy, but also for all the needs around the car. We also have the largest network of servicing stations in Greece and so on. So, and these are, to be honest, only a few services, right? That can be much more. So I think insurers will need to kind of branch out and enhance that product and make it much more interesting. The part that there's going to also be a very interesting sub-question is how much of that MTPL product will become even more commoditized, especially as you have more autonomous vehicles. And that actually pushes you even more into the services and ecosystem directions.
Premium volume, what do you think? What do you think? What is your personal number?
Personally, I can only agree with you.
Will it be less, more?
I think it will be more because of the higher sort of severity from electric vehicles. That we want, especially in 15 years, we won't have a high share of autonomous vehicles where you could argue there will be much less frequency. Inflation, I mean, is all over the place. So I would say definitely more.
Okay. I take the lady last.
A lower premium, better margin. That's the conclusion of what all you said. Because with all the technicalities, we will be a bit better in the handling of it, we will pay less, we will see better, and so on and so forth. And we are able to provide better service faster and so on. So that's my conclusion.
Very short conclusion from my side. I will not give you figures. I'm not into figures at all, from school on. But what I can tell you, and it goes in your direction, is that, of course, business will change. Yeah, motor business will change. But, sometimes the insurance industry is a little bit of underestimated, when it comes to progress. Given the mark of being traditional and stick to, common systems. But I think that's not the case. And we will deal with it. We will find solutions. Products will be different. Services will be on top. And we will see how it goes.
What Swiss Re estimated for 2040 was almost flat premium for developed markets with also a penetration of vehicles not being much higher than today, at 800 billion. And all the emerging markets have to look at India. It will be the largest market, then, according to them, going up from 200 billion to about 1 trillion. So overall, it's a very strong increase, but it's coming from emerging markets. And here, well, it's Central and Eastern Europe is probably a better shot than Austria, if you look at that. So especially when you look at the insurers here who are in Central and Eastern Europe, those markets have at least a chance to grow yet, naturally. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from the audience yet?
Yes, if you'd be so kind to give me just 3 minutes, because I have to say thanks.
Then come to the table.
Yes. I cannot leave without saying thanks. So, if you allow me 3 minutes, I just need really to say thanks for today's discussion. If you allow me, I will go a little bit back, a couple of for 40 years or something like this, because we are talking about the motor. I remember Henry Ford, and I adapt these scenarios for today. So Henry Ford invited 2 insurance agents on the dinner. Both of them are coming from Harvard University with the same scores. So he wanted to employ one. So he invested, this is really story, I just a little bit put adaptation inside, like insurance agents or brokers or telematics. After a couple of hours, Henry Ford stand up and said, Mr. George, you are employed. Mr. Sinisha, thank you very much for your efforts. I decided to take the George. So Sinisha, same score, Harvard University, 25 years old, no accidents, slowly driving car with the limits. I asked Henry Ford, why you are not taking me? Because I believe we have a similar quality and quantity with the George. He said, look, all the time you are sitting here, you are just focused on me. Your colleague, when the waiter came, he said, thank you very much indeed. Can you please provide me with that? He invests a couple of minutes to say also to the kitchen, to the main cook, thank you very much for the food. What I would like to say, what I learned today, it's a lot of puzzles which we have to put together. We have to be still focused on the people needs, which is safe and secure world, which insurance and reinsurance and telematics can provide. I believe it's demonstrated the cooperation between all these risk chain holders, stakeholders, can bring the value within 20 or 30 years. And what kind of currency will be in that time, I don't know, because I will not exist. I hope so not CO2, because a couple of weeks ago, Munich Re stepped out from the zero net alliances, and today also the Zurich Insurance Group. So I wish to all of us really very good perspective and to work on the daily basis to secure the people purpose. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, and I also would say thank you, panel, for the question and answer session, and I give it to Daniela for the wrap-up.
Thank you all. Well, in this friendly and moderately optimistic state of mind that I've seen from Sinisha 30 seconds ago, our conference ends for today, but I'm sure that we will have to further discuss for years if we will still be interested by this business, because new things are happening all the time. What I want at this point is to thank you all for being here, for joining us. Thanks to the speakers, thanks to the sponsors again, the Romanian Motor Insurance Bureau, RECREX and Hellas Direct, and of course, warm thank to the IUC Group who has supported us in many ways. Also in these occasions as many times before. Hopefully see you all again next year in Vienna in a warmer spring than this year. Until then, remain with us, follow the xprimm.com portal. You can get there all the news in the region, statistical data, or you need to keep in touch with these markets. On the conference website, you will soon find all the presentations as well as the video footage of this day. So all the information is there. From our part, data is free for you and available. Thank you all. See you soon.